The day after I was supposed to take my cat in for neutering, my boss looked at me differently. It was as if I were his father's killer. Later, I found out that the little kitten I almost neutered had my boss's soul inside it. How do I handle a grudge with my boss over something like this? Asking for advice. It's pretty urgent. On the way to get my cat neutered, I saw my boss get hit by a car. I was about to cross the street when I saw my boss, Roderick. In the distance, he seemed to notice me too and waved his hand to greet me. Just as I was about to put on my professional fake smile, a man driving a Maserati came barreling towards him, yelling, "I won't let you leave me." And then my boss flew through the air like a kite with a broken string. He even bounced once on the ground. I was stunned, watching the ambulance take my boss away and the police take the man who hit him. I stood there feeling confused. On one hand, my boss flew so far, he might not make it. On the other hand, I learned a little secret about my boss, and if he survives, I'm probably in big trouble. 6 months into the job, I felt like I was on the verge of getting laid off. The next morning, I sat at my desk with a worried look. Nicolette from the next cubicle noticed my size and came over to gossip. "What's up? Did you break up with someone?" I said, "No such luck." "Nicolette, you're more concerned about my love life than my parents are." Nicolette got annoyed, angrily flipping her hair at my face. When I didn't respond, she plopped down next to me and, glancing around to make sure no one was listening, said, "Did you hear? The boss had a car accident." I nodded. Not only did I know, but I was also an eyewitness. I sighed deeply. "I wonder how he's doing now. Is it serious?" Nicolette rolled her eyes and scoffed. "You people are always lusting after the boss. Look, he's already in the hospital this morning, out of humanitarian concern. I hoped my boss was okay, but personally, I hoped he lose his memory or something." Nicolette continued chattering. "I heard the boss is fine. He supposedly flew 3 meters high and only got a few scrapes. He'll probably be back soon." I looked at Nicolette in surprise. "Is that for real?" She smirked. "Of course it is. I got the news this morning. Roderick is quite the trooper. To recover so quickly, I didn't know whether to be relieved or disappointed. All I knew was that my good days were numbered." That evening, when I got home, my little orange cat wasn't waiting for me as usual. I'd been so shocked that I forgot to take him for his neutering appointment. His little eggs were still there. He shouldn't be holding a grudge against me. Curious, I opened the door. The orange cat was sitting on the sofa, staring out the window. The setting sun bathed him in a reddish-orange glow. He sat there with his legs on the sofa, staring blankly outside. For some reason, he looked so world-weary. When he heard me, he turned his head with no expression and his pupils widened. In that moment, I saw shock, confusion, and disbelief on his face. I rubbed my eyes, thinking I might be hallucinating from working too much. When I opened my eyes again, the orange cat still wore that dazed expression. I walked over to pet him, but he slid off the sofa, moving like orange juice. Meow, 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 meow. He meowed. For some reason, those meows sounded like "damn you" to me. Since my boss went to the hospital, my cat had become ill. He refused to eat his favorite fishkins, normally a voracious eater. Tonight, he didn't eat a single bite. He used to love watching me shower. Whenever I showered, he would sit beside me and meow if I tried to block his view. But now he seemed to have lost interest and didn't follow me to the bathroom anymore. I was a bit unsettled and called out to him, "Come on, I'm taking a shower." The orange cat looked at me with disbelief, as if to say, "I can't believe you're like this." At night, he also stopped cuddling with me while I slept. He used to insist on cuddling every night, but now he just sat on the balcony, staring at the stars past 11 o'clock. "What's going on?" I couldn't figure it out. Was he scared by the accident? I knocked on the balcony door, calling, "Paige, come back, Paige." The orange cat looked at me with no expression. I saw a hint of disdain in his eyes. No way. This can't be my Paige. On the 3rd day after the accident, Roderick had already completely recovered and was back at work. I couldn't help but marvel at his resilience, being hit by a car and flying 3 meters high. And he was back at work so soon. Capitalists not only exploit others, but also themselves even more. As Nicolette and I were gossiping, Roderick came out of his office, talking on the phone. He had long legs, a narrow waist, and a smooth oval face. His fox-like eyes behind golden glasses were mesmerizing. The girls around were secretly watching him. As he walked by my desk, he suddenly stopped. He covered his phone and said to me, "Come to my office." The day had come. I looked at him in fear, thinking he was about to fire me. Nicolette, standing next to me, looked thrilled as if she had just spotted fresh dog poop on the street, her eyes wide with excitement. I rolled my eyes at her and followed Roderick into his office. Roderick sat in his leather chair, leaning on his desk with his elbows, his head bowed. He hadn't used hair wax today, and his black, messy hair fell over his forehead, giving him a vulnerable beauty. I sat across from him, nervously waiting for instructions. What should I do if I know the boss likes men? Help, I need advice. Roderick was silent for a while, seemingly organizing his thoughts. Maybe he felt awkward, since his subordinate had discovered his sexual orientation and didn't know how to broach it. I decided to take the initiative. Roderick, I won't tell anyone about your preference for men. Roderick looked confused. It was the first time I'd seen his fox eyes so wide, almost like almond eyes. He stared at me blankly. What are you talking about? I wanted to slap myself. Roderick frowned. I don't like men. Apparently, he didn't want to come out of the closet. I quickly nodded. Right. You don't like men. I get it. Roderick looked at me, speechlessly, and sighed. You've been leaving work early lately. No wonder he makes so much money. Even a low-level employee like me leaving work early caught his attention. I mentally cursed him, but explained. I only leave after punching out at 5. He nodded. There was a moment of silence in the office. I looked at him in confusion, not understanding why he called me in. After a while, Roderick sighed deeply. Looking very tired, he covered his face with one hand and waved the other. You can go. I was completely bewildered as I left his office and returned to my desk, avoiding Nicolette's eager face. I privately speculated that Roderick might be subtly warning me not to spread rumors about his sexual orientation. I felt a surge of self-praise for my astuteness. When I got home, Paige wasn't there to greet me again. I looked at the sofa. Sure enough, he was in the same spot with the same expression. I looked at his weary face and couldn't help but sigh. My Paige has grown up and has worries. I quickly ran over and grabbed him, burying my face in his belly and inhaling deeply. Ah, so soothing. Paige looked at me blankly. I leaned in to give him a kiss, but he quickly put a paw over my mouth. There. I turned away. Don't push me with your paw that just buried your poop. Paige struggled angrily, and seeing that I couldn't hold him, I had to throw him back onto the sofa. What's going on? My Paige has always been so gentle, never resisting no matter how I rub him. Why is he so different these days? Paige jumped onto the sofa, turning his back to me. I noticed his round, furry cat balls peeking out from behind and realized he must be in heat, which is why he is so irritable. While he wasn't looking, I gently reached out and patted his balls. Paige, Mommy will take you for neutering tomorrow. The next day, I went to ask my supervisor for leave. I didn't mention taking my cat for neutering, but came up with a stomachache excuse. Banyan, being a kind person, agreed right away. Is it serious? No need to go through the procedure. It's fine, just go. I was a bit touched. Banyan is a great guy, with no flaws, except for his thinning hair. I packed up to leave quietly, but just as I was about to stand up, a shadow fell over me. I looked up. Roderick stood in front of my desk with a black face, looking like a grim reaper. Roderick, do you have any instructions? I was a bit scared. What are you going to do? His voice had an undertone of grinding teeth. Oh no, the boss caught me skipping work. I stammered. I'm just tidying up my desk. I don't know if it's just my imagination, but I could have sworn I saw a hint of a sinister smile on Roderick's face. Really? Leaving early without notice will cost you your attendance bonus, he said. I nodded, quickly put everything back where it belonged, and picked up a cloth to pretend to clean the table. Roderick gave me a look, sneered, and walked away. Nicolette leaned in with curiosity and asked, What's going on? Did you offend the boss? I looked at her in despair. I knew it. I discovered the boss's secret, and now I'm going to be punished. After flaking out on the vet for the second time, I arrived home, exhausted. I kicked off my shoes and, familiar with the routine, walked straight to the sofa, pressed Paige's paw, and buried my face in its furry little belly. Paige, Mommy might lose her job. You might not get to eat so many kinds of cat food anymore. Paige looked stunned for a moment, then started wriggling wildly. But it was just a weak little kitten. I held its tiny, flailing paws and snuggled it close. What should I do? After cuddling with the cat, I lay on the sofa with a vacant look in my eyes. The company is great, with high benefits, good pay, and no overtime on weekends. I was lucky to get in, but now the top boss has it out for me. Will there be any good days ahead? I stared at the ceiling, feeling that I had to take control of my own fate. I can't be this passive. I need to send out resumes. That night, Paige still refused to sleep with me and now sleeps alone on the sofa. Without this warm, furry little thing, I haven't been sleeping well the past couple of days. It feels like something's missing. But when I try to get it on the bed, it refuses no matter what. I had no choice but to wait until it fell asleep and then sneakily bring it to the bed. True to its orange cat nature, it didn't wake up despite being moved around. With its familiar warmth in my arms, I snuggled into the blankets contentedly. In the middle of the night, I felt something moving in my arms. I opened my eyes to see Paige, who had woken up for some reason, frantically trying to wriggle away from me, still half asleep and forgetting about its recent odd behavior. I held it tighter, saying, Paige, Stop messing around and go back to sleep. I paused for a moment, and then wriggled even more frantically. A sharp pain shot through my thigh. I woke up in pain, feeling like my thigh was bleeding. I turned on the light, and saw a 3-inch long scratch on my thigh, already oozing blood. Frowning, I realized Paige had never scratched anyone before. Its claws are usually retracted. Is it really this bad when it's in heat? Looks like getting it spayed is urgent. I looked at Paige, which was now standing at the foot of the bed with a blank expression, staring intently at my thigh. I disinfected the wound with alcohol and rinsed it with water until it barely stopped bleeding. When I got back into bed, Paige was sitting on the pillow, watching me. Its round, chubby face seemed to show a hint of guilt. Seeing me sit down, it hesitated for a moment, then walked over and nudged my arm with its head. Its soft little head rested gently on my arm, and I felt my heart melt. Never mind, it's not Paige's fault. It's just a little kitten in heat. What can it do wrong? The real problem is those 2 testicles. I squinted at the testicles behind Paige, which seemed to be feeling guilty. Looks like I can't let you to stay. Paige, unaware of the impending danger, finally stopped struggling when I held it again. It seemed to let out a low sigh, as if resigned to the harshness of life. I comforted it, saying, Paige, it's okay. It's not your fault. Once mommy gets you spayed, you'll be fine. Then you'll become that sweet, well-behaved little Paige. Okay. I rubbed its little nose. Paige turned its head to look at me. That look seemed to hold 1,000 words, yet said nothing at all. I didn't pay much attention and continued to comfort it. I was going to take you today, but that stupid boss wouldn't let me leave this Saturday. I'll take you to get those testicles removed. Are you happy? You're going to go from being a little male kitten to a little neutered kitty soon. The next day at work, Roderick walked back and forth in front of me 3 times before finally entering his office. Nicolette quietly poked me, saying, Hey, look at how much Roderick is paying attention to you now. You're so lucky. I rolled my eyes. Want this luck for yourself? She sheepishly backed away. I kept feeling like Roderick's gaze was filled with anger and maybe a bit of panic. What could he be panicking about? Afraid I'll spread his scandalous news around the office. I'm not Nicolette. After a while, Anion came out of the office looking pleased and stood right in front of me, excitedly saying, Our proposal was approved. Approval meant a bonus, so I was pretty happy too. Roderick wants you to come in on Saturday to report on your work, Anion said, winking at me, as if his face was twitching. Young people, seize the opportunity. My expression changed. What opportunity? Can you be clear? Why does everything have to be discussed on a Saturday? Can't it be done during work hours? Roderick's trying to make my life difficult, and now he's not even taking a break himself. Is this really necessary? Damn, this is unbearable. After flicking out on the vet for the 3rd time, the vet office politely said they couldn't take me on for the time being. I've been blacklisted by the vet. All this is Roderick's fault. So what if I accidentally found out he likes men? What's the big deal? It's 2024, and people are still so narrow-minded. He's got a mind as small as a pinhead. I held Paige and vented my frustrations. This damn stupid boss is ruining my life. Paige, you won't get your testicles removed, and you're going to suffer because of it. What's so wrong with liking men? Does it matter that much? If he's got a problem, he shouldn't be looking for men. I held Paige's struggling paws and patted its furry little testicles hard. You're safe for now. Paige tried to kick me, but ended up pressing its paw against my chest. I could feel its soft little paw making a small indent on my chest. Paige stared blankly at its paw. After a moment, it seemed shocked and jumped up as if it had been electrocuted, leaping half a meter high. I was amazed, not realizing cats could jump so high. Paige stood there with its big eyes wide open, staring directly at my chest. I even thought it looked a bit embarrassed. Its silly expression combined with its chubby body was incredibly cute. I couldn't help myself and pounced on Paige, burying it in my chest and rubbing it frantically. Paige, afraid of scratching me, didn't dare to kick too hard, but its expression seemed to show extreme humiliation as it stiffened up. That night, when I held Paige while sleeping, it didn't struggle. It just looked resigned, as if it had accepted this harsh, unreasonable life. When it rains, it pours. The next morning, I woke up with familiar abdominal pain. I felt something was wrong and rushed to the bathroom. Sure enough, my period had started after a long time. I get quite cold during my period, and the pain is almost unbearable. Banyan knows about this and usually gives me 2 days off, but today is Saturday, and my terrible boss wants me to come in for a report. Tail. I climbed back into bed and checked my phone. It was already 6:30. In 2.5 hours, I have to be at the company. I Saturday on the bed clutching my stomach, contemplating the possibility of quitting, but I can't bear to give up that big bonus. The pain intensified, and the cold sweat soaked through my nightgown. I curled up in agony. Paige, who usually sleeps past 9, was woken up by my movements. It opened its eyes and looked around. Noticing I wasn't cuddling it as usual, it crawled out of the blanket and came over to me. Seeing me drenched in sweat, noticing my discomfort, Paige seemed anxious. It paced around the bed and meowed at me. Paige, just play by yourself for now. I first stay smite despite the pain. Mommy needs to rest for a bit. I still have to go out later. Seeing the ibuprofen on the nightstand, Paige meowed louder and kept nudging my blanket with its little head. I ignored it. I was in too much pain. In a semi-conscious state, I felt a soft little thing burrow into the blankets. That warm little body pressed against my stomach, bringing a sense of comfort. I hugged it tightly, half asleep. When I woke up, the sun was already high in the sky. Outside the window was bright sunshine and a clear, cloudless sky. I admired the blue sky for a moment and sighed. Spring is really on its way. I sat up and picked up my phone. Seeing a string of missed calls, I frowned. Oh no, it's already 10:50. Spring is coming, and I'm about to become an unemployed worker looking for a job again. I know exactly who those missed calls are from without even asking. It must be my boss, who's got a mind smaller than a needle's eye. What should I do? Despairing, I stared at the phone screen, took a deep breath, and dialed back with trembling fingers. Beep beep beep. My heart started racing. I've left my boss hanging. Roderick might be worrying about how to fire me. I've given him a perfect excuse. Desperately, I listened to the phone, even hoping it wouldn't connect. Hello, a deep voice came through. I flinched. Hello, is this Roderick? There was a brief silence on the other end. Ella. Yes, I said with a pained expression. Roderick, I'm so sorry. He interrupted me. Oh, I called to let you know that I have a scheduling conflict, so today's report is cancelled. I looked up in surprise. Cancelled? Yes. He paused before continuing. I have something on Monday as well, so don't come in, just report on Tuesday instead. But you need to stay on standby and not go far. I nodded repeatedly. All right. Do you have any further instructions, Roderick? There was silence on the other end for a moment. How are you doing? His tone sounded a bit off. Nothing. With that, he hung up. I was left listening to the dial tone, still a bit in disbelief. Was this for real? Did he really want me to never come back? Or was Roderick just too busy with his boyfriend to deal with me? I suddenly found myself with an unexpected extra day off. The painkillers had started to kick in, and my stomach felt much better. I happily pulled back the covers to find Paige still snouncing, its little belly rising and falling with soft purring. I gently tapped it. Time for breakfast. Paige instantly woke up, blinking its round eyes and meowing as it stretched and rubbed against me. Seeing the familiar sight of Paige made me feel a bit relieved. It looked like the heat was over. Paige's appetite had been off these past few nights, only drinking water and avoiding food. I thought it might be sick, but during the day, it was still eating like a little excavator, finishing 2 cans of food in no time. Maybe it was just feeling a bit down at night. Paige and I lounged in bed all day and only got up in the evening. Since my stomach was feeling better, I decided to work on my report. As I stood up and walked to my desk, Paige tried to pull me back to bed by clutching my skirt with its paw. I figured it wanted me to rest a little longer. I picked it up and gave it a few kisses. Mommy needs to work to make money. Otherwise, how will you get your cans of food? Seeing that my persuasion didn't work, Paige jumped onto my lap and snuggled up, pressing its body against my stomach. I stroked Paige affectionately and opened my computer. I wanted Roderick to see my talents and realize he couldn't bear to let me go. My enthusiasm lasted until I opened the proposal file. Seeing thousands of words on the screen made me frown. Maybe I should start working in 5 more minutes. I stared at the computer, my mind drifting. The guy who crashed into Roderick the other day wasn't bad looking either, but he still seemed a bit unworthy of Roderick. The way he looked so angry and resentful, it was truly unsettling. What kind of love-hate drama was going on between them that it escalated to a public fight? Did Roderick abandon him? I patted Paige's rear and muttered to myself, Paige, what do you think the relationship between Roderick and that guy is? No relation, Paige replied, sounding a bit annoyed. I was skeptical. Really? I don't believe it. Paige didn't answer, and the room fell into a stifling silence. I looked down at Paige, and it slowly looked up at me. After a moment, I began to shiver all over. Suddenly, I jumped up. Oh my God, the cat spoke. I leaped 3 feet in that air, my eyes wide as saucers. Paige looked at me blankly for a moment, then thought for a while before meowing, but it was a plain meow with no inflection. It looked at me as if to say that everything that just happened was just a figment of my imagination. I pointed at it angrily. Are you trying to make me look like a fool? There's a camera over there. Do I need to check it again? Paige turned to look and, indeed, saw the camera. It seemed surprised and stood there for a moment, its paws in front of its chest. Deep in thought, its furry face showed no expression, but I could clearly see its inner turmoil. We stared at each other for 10 minutes before I decided to check the footage. Seeing this, Cage got anxious. Desperately, it spoke up. Okay, I admit it. I've turned into a spirit. I turned to look at it, expressionless. Actually, the camera's been out of battery for a while. Damn it, I heard it mutter. Cats shouldn't use bad language. Paige turned away, refusing to talk to me after I threatened to have it spayed. It finally gave in. It looked at me with innocent eyes. Please don't send me for spaying. Aren't I your favorite, Paige? I'm just a pitiful, weak, and helpless spirit cat. Yeah, I sneered. You're just a heartless bull-down seer that can eat 3 cans of food in one sitting. Paige remained silent, looking at me with its big, watery eyes, trying to appeal to my conscience. I said I wasn't trying to target it, but it was difficult to handle being kept in the dark like this. Paige thought for a moment and said, I didn't mean to deceive you. I was just absorbing the essence of the sun and moon every day, and accidentally turned into a spirit. I didn't dare to tell you. You see me lounging on the couch every day. I was actually practicing. I raised an eyebrow. So, what can you do? Do you have any special abilities, like turning stones into gold or diamonds? Paige looked at me with a hint of disdain. If I could, would I be here eating your soft food? I can only control my intelligence from. It thought for a moment and gave me a very specific time, from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. I summarized. So you're saying you're a newly turned spirit with no abilities, just a poor cat who can only eat soft food. Paige sat her up straight and said, correct. Well, if that's the case, we'll just continue as before. I won't send you for spaying, and I'll continue to take care of you every day. Okay. I'm glad you think so. It's great that you feel that way, it said happily. I smiled. All right, Roderick. Thank you for your understanding and support of this plan. Paige nodded. Of course. The room was eerily quiet, except for the sound of Paige's heart beating. It slowly turned its head to look at me, and I could almost hear its neck creaking. A nervous voice came from its throat. What did you just say? What, Roderick? I don't know. Honestly, I wasn't sure if Paige was Roderick. I just thought it was too coincidental that Roderick kept blocking me from spaying Paige. Seriously, I couldn't understand how a big company CEO could be so naive to get fooled twice. Must have come through the back door. I looked at Paige, who was now regretfully covering its face with its paws, and decided to have an honest conversation with him. He tried to resist, but I quickly put him in his place. Since you're not Roderick, let's go ahead with the spaying. Anyway, I don't plan to find you a mate, so those 2 eggs are useless. I pulled out my phone to call the vet before I could dial. Paige jumped down and came over to me, furious. All right, I'm Roderick. Okay, Ella, I'm really done with you. Can you just keep it to yourself? If you keep embarrassing the boss, I'll fire you tomorrow. I forced a malicious smile. Good. I've always thought there wasn't enough time to get you spayed. At this moment, Roderick finally realized the profound question of whether prior his eggs were more important. He swallowed his pride and, for the sake of his eggs, promised to promote and give me a raise once he recovered. I smirked. I believed him. I was just pretending. That night, as I was going to bed, Roderick nimbly jumped onto the bed. His chubby body seemed so light. He walked over with an elegant cat stride, sticking his rear in the air and trying to burrow into the covers. I yanked him out. What are you doing? Go sleep in your cat bed. He was held up by the scruff of his neck, reaching out his front paws to push me away. Let me go. Didn't you always want to snuggle with me? I threw him on the floor. You're not a cute kitty anymore. You're a smelly man now. Get lost. Smelly man. Roderick awkwardly turned in midair and landed with his chin. He wasn't angry and shook his head, looking at me with his big round eyes, tilting his head cutely. I'm still a cute kitty. Meow. So disgusting. I kicked him out and slammed the door. After kicking Roderick out, I couldn't help but admire myself. Ella, you're amazing. Yesterday, I was so deferential to the boss, and today, I'm confronting him head-on. But seriously, Roderick's image in my mind was always quite grand. Handsome, capable was the epitome of a life winner. But seeing him like this today, if he hadn't exposed himself, I really wouldn't have believed he was Roderick. Threatening the boss with spaying, whoa, that's a real power move. Roderick, having learned to scratch at the door on his own, was making a squeak sound outside. Let me in. How can you leave a little kitty out in this cold weather? I responded coldly. How about you go sleep at the vets? There was silence for a moment before Roderick's sorrowful voice came through the door. Ella, how can you say such cold words with a 37-degree mouth? Roderick said that after being hit, he turns into Paige every night at precisely 8 p.m. He could feel Paige's soul sleeping in his body, and once it leaves, it takes over. I now think that living together in one small body every day Roderick is gradually becoming more cat-like. I wrapped myself in the blanket and sighed. Life is so unpredictable. When I ran into Roderick in the cafeteria, he was standing in front of the salmon window. The food server looked a bit puzzled, since Roderick usually didn't like fish. Roderick stood at the window, his eyes showing a bit of longing for the salmon. The server, understanding, said, "Roderick, this was just delivered this morning and is very fresh. Would you like to try some?" Roderick hesitated for a moment, but couldn't resist extending his plate. Half some. I couldn't help but chuckle a little on the side, and it seemed like he felt I was making fun of him, as he suddenly whipped his head around. His expression was a complex mix of vengeful intent and fear going to the vet. Nicolette whispered, "What did you do to Roderick? He seems to have mixed feelings about you. Are you playing out some dumb Ezio false for me drama or something?" I muttered one word, scram. "Nicolette, you should stop reading those silly novels, or you won't find a date." Nicolette rolled her eyes at me and sat her day down, not far away. Roderick had already finished getting his food. I saw him scanning the large cafeteria as if looking for someone. Nicolette stretched her neck like a turtle from my mom's house and poked me with her chopsticks, excitedly saying, "Hey, Roderick's looking for you." Her voice was a bit loud, drawing the attention of people eating nearby. I felt a bit embarrassed and quickly lowered my head. "Keep it down. You can't even keep quiet while eating," Nicolette grumbled under her breath. "So boring." I was just putting some salmon in my mouth when a shadow fell over me. I looked up and, sure enough, it was Roderick holding his plate. He smiled at Nicolette and said, "I need to discuss some work with Ella." Nicolette, with her mouth full of rice, turned bright red and almost choked. She nodded vigorously, jumped up, and left, not forgetting to give me a significant look. Roderick politely thanked her and came around to sit next to me, dressed in a suit. He placed his plate elegantly on the table and said, through gritted teeth, "I slept on the sofa last night and caught a cold." At Roderick's strong insistence, he had moved back to the bedroom. His reasoning was that I had insisted on sleeping with him initially, and now he was used to it and couldn't change. After all, he was still my boss during the day, so I had to give him some face, but I agreed to let him sleep in the bedroom's cat bed. We both compromised and reached a friendly agreement. That night, while I was scrolling through my phone, I suddenly saw a message. The movie was premiering this Saturday afternoon. It was the film debut of my favorite female singer, and I had been dying to see it. I quickly opened my phone to book a ticket, but found that the premiere showing was already sold out. Even the edge seats were booked. Other theaters had the same situation. I felt a bit disappointed. Premieres have a certain unique vibe. Watching it the next day would mean I'd probably see spoilers or reviews beforehand. The mattress next to me sunk slightly as Roderick jumped up and peeked at my phone. He complained, "Little kitten can't even play with the phone. So boring." "Hey." He leaned over to see. "You want to see this?" I nodded, "But it's already sold out, so forget it." He stared at my phone thoughtfully without saying anything. I turned to him. "What are you doing up here? Get down." Roderick shot me a look and climbed down. "Heartless woman, you were calling me Paige a few days ago, and now it's all you this. You that once you get something, you never appreciate it." He grabbed the cat bed, struggled to drag it to the foot of the bed near the heater, jumped up, circled around, and found a comfortable spot to lie down. I watched him with interest. Roderick has really adapted to his new life as a kitten quickly. Noticing me looking at him, he covered himself with his little blanket and turned away, his chubby body wiggling. Humph. The next morning, I slept in a bit and almost arrived at work just in time. Banyan didn't say much but asked, "How's your health lately? Did you go to the hospital for your stomach?" I waved my hand. "I'm fine. Just a minor issue. Much better than before." Young people don't know how to take care of themselves. When you're older, you'll regret it. You should take advantage of your youth. Ding-a-ling-ling. My internal phone rang. Banyan said, "Enter the phone first," and walked away with his hands behind his back. I answered, "Hello." A familiar voice came through. First, I don't go by hello. I go by Roderick. Second, I covered my face. Roderick seemed to be increasingly out of control lately. I wondered if he was so repressed all the time that he had developed a split personality. "Roderick," I interrupted his performance. "Do you need something?" Roderick, clearly a bit annoyed, snapped, "Come to my office." He hung up the phone. Great, that's my second phone call hung up on. Just what I needed for settling debts. I walked into the office under the curious gazes of others. Recently, due to Roderick's unusual attention, rumors about us had started circulating in the company. Without asking, I knew Nicolette's big mouth was involved. I pushed open the office door. "Roderick, what can I do for you?" Roderick tossed a proposal at me. "This is from Banyan. What do you think?" Banyan is my supervisor, so technically I shouldn't see his work without permission. But since the boss asked, I couldn't refuse. I picked it up and looked through it, politely saying, I think Banyan's proposal is very good, innovative, and practical. Roderick scoffed. That's all just cliches. If you know it's cliches, why ask me? I placed the proposal on the desk and stared at him with a blank expression. Roderick seemed a bit uneasy under my gaze. He cleared his throat and pointed to the cup in front of him. I am thirsty. Make me a cup of coffee. Isn't that the secretary's job? Doesn't your secretary, Xiao Zhang, get you water? I glanced at the cup, then at my watch, and then at Roderick without looking directly at him. With a sigh, I got up to make coffee. I didn't ask what kind of beans he wanted, and just grabbed a random box to grind. I'm not a big coffee drinker myself, so I don't really know much about it. I brewed it simply, didn't add milk or sugar, and handed it to Roderick. Be careful. Roderick didn't hesitate, taking a sip immediately. His face went through a dramatic change of expressions. Hot. I swallowed my words. Roderick's face turned red and blue as he forced down the hot and bitter coffee, hissing as he took a breath. Not bad. Brewed well. He slammed the cup on the desk, and I saw his hand gripping the armrest of the chair turn white from the tension. He took a moment to recover, and pulled out a small piece of paper from the drawer, tossing it to me. Here, this ticket is for you. I picked it up, and saw it was for the 5 p.m. showing on Saturday. I was a bit surprised, and looked up at Roderick. His face started to turn red. Roderick picked up the coffee cup to cover his face. Don't be too touched. It just so happens that someone gave it to me, and I don't like this sort of thing, so you can have it. I was moved and held the movie ticket tightly. Thank you, Roderick. Roderick mumbled. Why thank you, Roderick? It's not sincere. You should say thank you, Roderick. I smiled, with a hint of warmth in my tone that I didn't even realize. Thank you, Roderick. How cheesy. Just go. Go already. Roderick turned his head away and refused to look at me. I noticed his neck, constrained by his tie, was faintly red, and I couldn't help but laugh. Well, I'll head out now. Roderick waved his hand without saying anything. As soon as I closed the office door, Roderick jumped up, went to the water cooler, and downed a large glass of cold water. Damn it, he said, fanning himself with his mouth open. That was so hot. When I went to the premiere, I deliberately wore a new dress I had just bought and put on some makeup. Life needs a bit of ceremony. I arrived early, just as the previous showing was letting out. The seat Roderick got me was pretty good, in the middle of the back row with a great view. I sat her down and took a photo of the movie ticket to post on social media. Suddenly, someone tapped me on the shoulder. I turned around to see a young guy, wearing a baseball cap. He looked a bit shy, holding up his phone and saying, "Hi, I saw you earlier. I think you're really pretty. Could I get your contact information?" As I was about to decline, a familiar voice came from behind me. No, she can't. She already has a boyfriend. Roderick appeared, stuffing a large bucket of popcorn into my arms and placing a Coke on my right side. I could smell his subtle, elegant fragrance. This show-off must have used perfume. After completing his little routine, Roderick looked at the guy with a challenging gaze. The guy, looking embarrassed, muttered an apology and ran off. I looked at Roderick, busy with his tasks, and couldn't help but ask, "Why are you here?" Roderick nonchalantly sat her down next to me and grabbed a handful of popcorn from my lap. "Oh, the person who gave me the ticket said there was an extra one, and since he wasn't going, he gave it to me to avoid wasting it." He said this without looking at me, keeping his expression unchanged, but his ears were turning red. I understood and decided not to call him out. "That's quite a coincidence." "Yeah, right," Roderick complained. "I really didn't want to come." He insisted. "So here I am. I was just napping at home before this." Looking at his carefully styled hair, I nodded. "Yeah, some people can be really annoying." Roderick seemed to think it was enough and didn't say more, closing his mouth. As for the movie, it was excellent. It was a film debut of my favorite singer, and now she can be called an actress. Even though it was my first acting role, the performance felt completely natural, almost even more impressive than my singing talent. In a bad-ending romantic comedy, the audience was in tears, and I could even hear the soft sobs of a girl sitting next to me. In the latter half of the film, the lead couple shared a passionate kiss in the snow late at night, fully aware that it was their last kiss, making it all the more intense. I heard Roderick next to me swallow. I reached for the popcorn, but just as my hand was diving in, another hand covered mine. It was warm. I turned my head, and Roderick was looking right back at me. In the dark theater, our eyes locked. Roderick's expression was serious, as if I was more captivating than the movie. Our hands stayed in the popcorn bucket, neither of us moving. At that moment, time seemed to freeze. The characters' confessions, the audience's sniffles, and the occasional phone ring all blended into a chaotic mix. But all I could hear was the rapid pounding of my own heartbeat. It felt like an eternity, yet also just a blink of an eye. I was the first to react, pulling my hand away as if I'd been shocked. Roderick hesitated for a moment, then turned back and shoved popcorn into his mouth. On the screen was my favorite actress, and the movie was quite captivating. I stared intently, but my mind was blank, unable to focus on anything. When the lights in the theater finally came on, I realized the movie had ended. People around us started to leave, walking past us in all directions. Only Roderick and I remained seated, neither of us getting up first. Once everyone else had gone, only Roderick and I were left. We stayed silent, the atmosphere growing a bit awkward. It seemed like neither of us knew what to say. After a moment, I stood up, without looking at Roderick, and said, "Shall we go?" He gave a quiet and followed me out. We walked together, me in front and Roderick dutifully trailing behind, like I was the boss and he was my little secretary. Roderick drove, and even though we didn't speak, we instinctively got into the car together, strapping on our seatbelts. Roderick broke the silence with, "This new brand of cat food isn't very good." "Not pure," I replied. "It sounds like you've tried it." Roderick was silent. I turned to look at him with wide eyes. "You haven't actually tried it, have you?" He looked a bit embarrassed. "I just had a bite. A small one, mainly because Paige wanted to try it." He added, Maybe it's because it's too expensive. Try a cheaper one next time." I hesitated, but couldn't resist asking. "There's something I've been wanting to ask for a while." Roderick, seeming nonchalant, said, "Go ahead." I now wondered if Roderick liked not only men, but possibly women too, so I gathered my words. "That guy who hit you with his car." As soon as I brought up the topic, Roderick slammed his leg in frustration. He fumed. "I'm telling you, I was just unlucky. Do you know what bad luck is? I don't even know that guy, and he doesn't know me." I was a bit puzzled. "Then why did he hit you?" "Oh," Roderick seethed. "He wasn't aiming for me at all. He was trying to hit the woman behind me. She's his ex, but he was driving too fast and hit me instead. Not only did he crash into my cat, but my reputation got wrecked too. My parents now think I like men. My mom almost had a fit." "Oh, I see." I understood. No, it was just a case of collateral damage. Roderick, looking at me anxiously, said, "I don't like men. Really, I don't. I like." His face turned bright red as he struggled to continue. I was so startled that I grabbed his hand and pointed forward. "Don't look at me, look at the road." On the way back, it started raining. By the time we got home, the rain had gotten heavy, and the wipers were struggling to keep up. Since I don't have a car, I didn't rent a parking spot when I rented my place. Roderick parked in front of the building. "You get out first, and I'll find a place to park." I felt a bit awkward. "It's okay. I'll go with you. I'm not in a hurry." Roderick nodded but didn't drive off. The air suddenly felt thick and tense. We sat quietly in the car. Jazz saxophone music flowed through the rainy night, with raindrops hitting the windshield and quickly being wiped away by the wipers. The neon lights in the distance appeared as blurred shadows through the mist. In the confined space, the sounds of the music, rain, wipers, and our heartbeats intertwined. Even though the temperature was cool, my face slowly started to heat up, and I broke into a light sweat on my back. I turned to look at Roderick. He was intently staring at the steering wheel, his gaze fixed as if the steering wheel had bloomed into a flower. I was struggling to hold back, unfastened my seatbelt, and said, I'm going inside." Roderick said nothing. I reached for the car door. Just as I was about to get up, my left hand was suddenly grabbed. I looked back in surprise. Roderick was silent, holding my hand firmly. I sat back down in my seat. "You." My words were cut off. In the lingering romantic music, Roderick's handsome face seemed to enlarge in my vision, and a faint, sweet scent enveloped me. I stayed still. My mind felt like mush, with only one thought: when did his seatbelt come off? Roderick's gravelly voice came. "Close your eyes." I glanced at him and shut my eyes. A mix of mint and tobacco scents drew closer, and my heartbeat skipped a beat. Just before our lips touched, I suddenly felt a weight on me. Opening my eyes, I saw Roderick's closed eyes and realized he had fainted. I was stunned. Moments later, in a panic, I tried to help him, thinking he must have fainted from excitement over the kiss. As I was about to help Roderick up, I caught a glimpse of the car screen. The time displayed, 8 p.m. "Oh, crap." I looked up. Through the car window, I saw my curtains being flung open with a whoosh. An orange, chubby figure angrily bounced up in front of the window. Even from this distance, I could hear its angry muttering, "Damn it." After gratefully seeing off the kind neighbor, I covered Roderick with a blanket. Before leaving, the neighbor reminded me, "Tell the young man to drink less next time." Nowadays, even handsome guys aren't safe out there. Roderick, lying on the floor, was so furious he was hopping mad. He dashed up to the bed with surprising speed for his hefty frame and came close to me. "How could I be so unlucky? I'm so frustrated." He stood up, pushing at my arm. "Hurry, let me have a kiss, or I won't be able to sleep tonight." I looked at the little chubby figure in front of me, whose belly jiggled as he stood up, his round eyes filled with frustration. The fluttering excitement from earlier was now gone, and I calmly pushed him away. "Don't kiss me with your cat's mouth that just licked its own butt." Roderick was livid. "I didn't lick my butt." I pointed at his little cat mouth. "Smell your own breath. Does it smell like a butt?" He looked at me skeptically, trying to peer at his own rear while spinning around on the bed. Seeing him chasing his own tail, I suddenly felt drained. I lay back, staring at the ceiling, and sighed deeply. What kind of karma did I create? Roderick spent the whole night trying to sneak up on me. In the middle of the night, I felt a heavy pressure on my chest, as if someone had punched me. I nearly lost my breath, and when I opened my eyes, I saw a pair of green, glowing eyes in the darkness. I was terrified, breaking out in a cold sweat. Roderick's eerie voice sounded. "Let me have a kiss." His furry feet were on my chest, and his 13-pound weight was squatting on me. At that moment, my anger reached its peak. I had already planned which vet to go to, and how to care for the post-surgery pet. Seeing the fury in my eyes, Roderick suddenly changed his tone, sounding pitiful. "Never mind the kiss. Will you just hold me while I sleep?" He looked at me with his big, watery eyes. I stared at him for a while, and finally couldn't help but sigh. "All right." I pulled the covers aside. "Come in." I pretended not to notice the smirk of triumph on Roderick's face. The warm bundle snuggled into the blankets. Roderick poked his head out from my chest after some time. All set, he nuzzled my chin with his head and said sweetly. I leaned down and kissed his head. "Good night." Roderick's eyes widened, and his stammered, "Gee, good night." The next morning, when Roderick called me into the office, Nicolette had stopped her shouting. In her words, "Even dogs could see the affair between us." She told me to remember her when I became the president's wife and to give her a promotion. I said she should be nice to me now, or she'd never get a chance later, starting with buying me a milk tea. Nicolette replied, "Milk tea. I see you as milk tea." "All right." I stood up. "It's not that I didn't give you a chance. You just didn't seize it. Enough. Let's go. You're giving me a headache." Nicolette turned away and ignored me. When I entered the office, I saw Roderick with 2 huge dark circles under his eyes. I was a bit surprised. "You passed out at 8 p.m. last night and slept until 8 a.m. this morning. How are you still not well rested?" Roderick was displeased. "I didn't sleep well at all last night. Your sleeping habits are terrible." "What happened?" I asked. "That's impossible. No one's ever said I sleep poorly." He turned his head away, blushing and silent. I asked, "What did you call me in for? To make a pass at me?" Roderick's eyes widened. "Is that possible?" "Not a chance." Roderick huffed and slammed a document on the desk. "I'm going on a business trip this week. You're coming with me?" I turned him down without even looking. "No, I have to go back home this week. My mom said she misses me since it's been such a long time since you last saw me." Roderick didn't take my refusal well and seemed a bit annoyed. "If you won't go with me, plenty of people will. I'll just call up all the pretty girls from the office." Right after dinner, my mom called. "Don't mention anything about blind dates when you come back this Saturday." I frowned. "What blind date?" She said conspiratorially. "I set up a blind date for your brother. When you get there, take him out, and then find a reason to leave halfway through." "Mom," I said helplessly, "aren't you trying to sabotage my relationship with Leaf? If my brother finds out, he'll probably ignore me." "It's fine. Just tell him I forced you into it." She insisted. "Ugh," I said, holding up my cup to take a sip of water. "What's the point of all this? At your age, you should be keeping yourself busy with something else." She snapped. "You little rascal. How dare you talk to me like that? Wait until it's your turn. Don't argue with me now." I rolled my eyes. Older women with nothing to do are truly terrifying. As soon as I opened the door, I saw an orange blur dart out. I didn't pay much attention, and only hung up after assuring my mom I would cooperate with her plan. Poor Leaf. I shook my head. I discussed with Roderick what he would do while I was home. I thought it was too cruel to send Roderick to a pet boarding facility, so I gave him 2 options. Option A, stay at a friend's house for a few days, but he couldn't make a sound, or he'd be sent to the vet. Option B, I will leave food and water for him, and he'd stay home for a few days. Roderick chose option C. He wanted to come home with me. I said, "No way. You're dreaming. Trains don't allow pets." Roderick wasn't happy. "You can fly me back with you." "No, that's too risky. What if something happens?" I shook my head. Seeing I was firm, Roderick reluctantly agreed to stay home by himself. I patted his head. "Be good. I'll bring you some special dried fish when I get back." Roderick fixed me with a dangerous look. "Ella, what exactly are you going back home for?" "I'm going to see my parents," I said, a bit puzzled. "Right." Roderick gave me a look that I was meant to interpret, then turned and walked away. He has his moments, but I didn't let it bother me. I packed up and left. Before leaving, I waved at him. Take care of yourself at home. Don't skim on food or water. Open the cans as needed. Roderick looked at me with a furry grin. Don't worry. I felt a bit reluctant. See you soon. Bye. Just before closing the door, I heard Roderick's slow voice. Yeah, we'll see each other soon. When I arrived home, my mom pulled me inside. Look at this. She showed me a picture on her phone. This girl is a high school teacher. Look at her round face. She looks so lucky. Born in a 93, perfect for your brother. I took a good look and, honestly, she did have a friendly face and a pleasant smile. Isn't she too good looking for my brother? I handed the phone back to her. Mom looked a bit worried. Who knows? Let's give it a try. It's a last-ditch effort, she said seriously. In a bit, you'll take your brother out for dinner, and when I call, you'll find a reason to leave. Okay. Seeing how seriously Mom was taking this, I thought to myself, alright, if Leaf gets mad, don't blame me. Don't worry, he should be thanking me. Does he think he can find a girl like that on his own? Mom dismissed it. Alright then, I nodded. When I went inside, Leaf was playing video games. His hair was even thinner than the last time I saw him. The few sparse strands on top looked a bit pitiful. Oh, late nights are rough. I yanked off his headphones. Leaf, let's go. I'm treating you to dinner. Leaf looked at me skeptically. You're treating me? Yeah, right. Like a weasel, paying a New Year's visit to a chicken of good intentions. I'm not going. He was about to put his headphones back on. I grabbed his arm. Really, this place is amazing. It's really expensive. Oh, I see. You want to eat but don't want to spend your own money, so you're making me foot the bill. Leaf looked at me disdainfully. I thought about it and replied, yes, your dear sister is home for a rare visit. Shouldn't you, as her brother, treat her to a nice meal? Mom chimed in. Yeah, she hasn't been home for 2 weeks. You, as her brother, should treat her to something nice. Don't be so stingy. Go on. Leaf looked at Mom, then at me. Alright, his side. I guess I'm the big sucker. Let's go. I rolled my eyes. Mom actually picked a pretty nice place. It had a lot of character. I glanced at the menu and was stunned by the prices. This was definitely a splurge. Leaf's face turned green and his voice started trembling. Let's keep it reasonable. Ella, it's not easy earning money at work. I ignored him. Where was Mom's call? I'd had 3 glasses of water, and if I didn't order soon, the waiter might get annoyed. Just as I was considering ordering some dessert to wrap things up quickly, I caught a familiar figure out of the corner of my eye. Roderick. I frowned, thinking I must be seeing things. Roderick looked serious, dressed up, and even wearing a tie, as if he were about to walk the runway. The young women around were sneaking glances at him. He strode in, surveyed the room, and quickly spotted me. When he saw me, his expression suddenly darkened. His face turned red, his lips were tightly pressed, and he stormed over, looking as if he had been cheated on. I stared in shock as he approached, not even realizing why he was here. When Roderick jabbed his finger in front of Leaf, Leaf looked up, puzzled. I suddenly had a bad feeling. Wait, I started to explain, but Roderick cut me off, fuming. Ella, so you came back to see your parents, but are actually here for a blind date. He sneered at Leaf's thinning hair and said, what, is this bald guy better than me, or do you just like bald men? My mouth fell open. Oh no. I watched as Leaf's face changed from green to red, then to black. He was trembling with rage, as if he were about to have a fit. Through gritted teeth, he spat. Ella, who the hell is this idiot? Roderick, hearing Leaf's insult, rolled up his sleeves and shouted, who are you calling an idiot? You, bald. I jumped up, trembling. Bro, it's not what you think. Let me explain. Bro. Roderick was stunned. A moment later, he turned to look at Leaf. His face went white as a sheet. Bro. What is this? A sweet voice suddenly interrupted. I looked up to see a pretty girl standing in front of us. She looked confused and hesitant, checking her phone and then looking at Leaf. Hello, are you Leaf? Leaf, still fuming, looked up in surprise. I am. And you are? Leaf, enraged. Roderick, panicking. Me, and a confused blind date were all caught in this mess. I covered my face and said, OMG. I grabbed Roderick and told Leaf, bro, this is your blind date. You two talk things over. We're leaving now. Don't be mad, you'll deal with him. Wait, Leaf said urgently. Clarify things. I ignored him, pulling Roderick out the door. Roderick looked like a doll, his eyes blank. It's over. It's over. He mumbled, I've offended my future brother-in-law. Everything's ruined. Seeing him like that, I got annoyed and said, what's wrong with you? Making a fuss out of nothing. Roderick looked up at me, sadly. That day, I'd overheard you talking about coming home for a blind date. I thought you didn't like me and wanted someone else. His pitiful expression made me both angry and amused. Well, my brother hates being called bald more than anything. While Roderick lowered his head. Enough with the fake crying, I said impatiently. Let's just go home. Roderick hesitated, dragging his feet. Can we stay a bit longer? We Saturday quietly in the car. Roderick kept sighing and lamenting, grabbing his hair in frustration. Seeing him like this, I felt a bit sympathetic, so I decided to drive him around to clear his mind. My hometown is a coastal city. Once we turned onto the seaside avenue, we were surrounded by green-tiled roofs, red bricks, and blue skies. Plump seagulls followed the car, hoping for some fries. I parked by the beach and walked barefoot with Roderick on the sand. Roderick started to cheer up a bit. He turned his face towards the sea and sneakily reached out to hold my hand. I held his hand back and noticed a faint blush on his face. The sea breeze was slightly salty, and under the distant blue of the sky and sea, the light glinted off the water. Roderick suddenly crouched down and picked up something to show me. Clam. I looked closely, and it was indeed a clam. Not small at all. Roderick, being an inland kid, immediately started digging in the sand, forgetting his earlier troubles. I smiled and continued walking. Translation: after walking for a while, I glanced back and saw that Roderick was still crouched in the same spot. Not sure what he was doing, I quietly approached him from behind to take a look. He had drawn a heart in the sand with his finger, with a small word inside and another one written beside it. Below, it read, "Together forever." How childish. I chuckled to myself, but couldn't help feeling a flutter in my heart. Roderick noticed me watching and stood up, looking at me seriously. His eyes were bright, his black hair tousled by the sea breeze, revealing his pale forehead. "Ella, do you like me?" he asked, my face flushed with heat. "What's this about?" Roderick stepped forward and hugged me. I could feel his heart beating rapidly. "I really like you," he said earnestly. "I just hope you like me as much as I like you." My heart warmed, and I hugged him back just as I was about to say, "I like you too." Roderick spoke again. "Will you help me apologize to my big cousin when we get home?" I pushed him away with a blank expression. "No." As we walked toward the parking lot, Roderick, holding my hand tightly, was unusually cheerful, planning how to apologize to leave. "I didn't know he was your brother, but he doesn't look anything like you. You're much better looking. Maybe I should invite my big cousin to get a hair transplant. Do you think he'd forgive me then?" I laughed and gave him a light punch. "Leaf hates it when people mention his hair. If you say that, he might just kick you out." I was about to continue, but Roderick's expression suddenly changed. He shoved me away with such force that I stumbled back and landed in a pile of grass. I watched in horror as an SUV came roaring toward us and hit Roderick. He rolled on the ground a couple of times and then lay still. My mind went blank, and my hands lost their strength. I struggled to get up. Nearby, people began screaming and gathering, calling for the police and an ambulance. I shakily ran over, feeling my legs weakening. "Roderick, Roderick." Roderick lay on the ground with his eyes shut, his left hand twisted unnaturally. I was afraid to touch him, but after taking a deep breath, I mustered the courage to feel for his pulse. After a moment, I collapsed on the ground in relief. Thank goodness, he still had a pulse. The ambulance sirens grew louder and closer. Soon, 2 doctors arrived and quickly checked Roderick's pulse before putting a small machine on his wrist to start timing. "Are you a family member?" one of the doctors asked. I nodded urgently. "Yes, I'm a family member." "Come on, family members, get in the ambulance." The doctors had to bystanders help lift Roderick into the ambulance. I couldn't bear to look at him or think too much, so I forced my weak legs into the ambulance. Roderick lay there pale and unmoving, with only a slight jostle as the ambulance sped along. The doctors handed me some forms to fill out. I took the paper and pen, only to find my hands shaking uncontrollably, unable to write a single word. "Doctor," my voice was dry. Is he okay?" The doctor shook his head. "It's hard to say right now. We'll need to do x-rays to check. His hand is definitely broken." I lowered my head. At the hospital, the doctors took over Roderick. I was called to register him and pay. By the time I returned, Roderick had already been taken for an examination. I stood dumbly in front of the operating room, staring at the bright light. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Tears streamed down my cheeks, and I didn't even bother to wipe them. A few months ago, he had been hit by a car in front of me too. Back then, I was indifferent, only worried about work. Now, my mind was blank, my body trembling, almost unable to stand. I could only close my eyes and earnestly pray to the heavens for another chance to spare him, even if it meant trading my own life. Around me, people came and went, chatting, watching videos, playing games. Voices filled the air. Yet, it felt as if everything around me had become a vacuum. There was no sound, no one around except for the operating room. Everything was invisible to me. Fear gripped my heart. My mind felt like it was going to explode. Yet it was also numb. I could only stand there waiting, unable to think about his condition, too scared to imagine it. After a while, I managed to get through to my mom and, through tears, said, "Mom, come to the Central Hospital right away. Your son-in-law has been hit by a car." I waited for over 10 minutes, in front of the operating room when it suddenly hit me. Wait, no one signed for Roderick. How could he be undergoing surgery? Just as I was about to turn around to find the doctors, a nurse hurried over. Are you a family member? The patient just woke up. His hand is broken and needs surgery right away. You're his wife, right? You need to sign for the procedure. I quickly followed the nurse. As soon as I entered, Roderick was lying on the bed, looking weak and barely conscious. Tears streamed down my face immediately. How are you? Roderick half opened his eyes, weakly saying, if I don't make it, you need to find someone who will take good care of you. Forget about me. With that, he weakly closed his eyes again. My heart skipped a beat. I tightly held his uninjured hand, choking on my words. No, you're going to be okay. Roderick opened his eyes again and said, try not to forget me. In the future, if you get married, you can bring your husband and kids to see me. That would make me content. Then he closed his eyes once more. I cried out, I don't want anyone but you. Roderick opened his eyes again. Really? Now I was starting to feel something was off. I supported myself on the edge of the bed and frowned at him. Are you really okay? His eyes crinkled into a smile. I was hurt, but since you don't want anyone else, what will you do if I die? I was about to respond when the curtain in the room was suddenly pulled aside, and a gray-haired doctor looked at me, hesitating. Miss, your partner is fine. The examination showed no internal bleeding, no fractures, and no brain issues, just a broken left hand that needs immediate surgery. We'll need to keep monitoring him, so let us know if he feels nauseous or unwell. The doctor shot a complex look at Roderick. My face turned bright red. Oh my God, there are still people in the room. How embarrassing. I felt so awkward, I wanted to dig a hole in the ground with my toes. Roderick, however, seemed unconcerned and looked at me seriously. Ella, I feel the same way. I looked at him in confusion. What? Roderick smiled. I don't want anyone else but you. Epilogue apology incident. I watched as Roderick Saturday in front of Leaf, crying and pleading. Big cousin, I'm sorry. I didn't recognize you as my big cousin. Please don't hold it against me. Leaf glared at him, silent. Seeing no reaction from Leaf, Roderick pulled out a large gift box from his pocket and, wiping non-existent tears, said sorrowfully, Big cousin, this is a hair growth kit I had a friend bring from Germany. I can't use it, but my bald friends say it works wonders. In a week, it turns grass into a forest, a bicycle into a motorcycle. I noticed Leaf's face darkening and quickly covered Roderick's mouth. What are you saying? Mom was a bit displeased. Leaf, why are you making such a face? Roderick has apologized. Why are you still being so stubborn? It's true you're bald, but do you really have to get so upset about it? Bald, bald. 1,000 arrows seemed to pierce Leaf. He looked like he might blow up on the spot. Leaf took a deep breath and, gritting his teeth, said, as long as I'm in this house, he won't set foot through this door. Then Leaf, Mom was furious. Leaf, almost enraged to the point of exploding, said, fine, I'm leaving. Let him be your son from now on. With that, he stormed out. Roderick, with tears in his eyes, held Mom's hand. Mom, I'm not good with words. I made my big cousin angry. It's all my fault. If my big cousin doesn't like me, it's my own doing. I rolled my eyes. I don't know where Roderick picked up his green tea act. Mom looked at Roderick affectionately. Leaf has such a bad temper. Don't mind him. His baldness has driven him crazy. Look at our Roderick. He's so handsome. Well, I silently felt sorry for Leaf for a second. That night, Roderick and Mom bid each other a tearful farewell. After Leaf came back, Mom wouldn't even look at him. Clearly, once she had a good-looking son, she forgot about the bald one. A few days later, I woke up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom and suddenly found Leaf in the bathroom, staring at himself in the mirror. Oh my God, is he really that obsessed with his baldness? I quietly peeked through the crack in the door. Leaf was carefully fiddling with his hair. I wasn't sure if it was just my imagination, but it seemed like his hair was getting thicker. Leaf, I pushed the door open. What are you doing? Leaf jumped 3 feet in the air, quickly hiding his right hand behind his back. I was startled too. Why are you sneaking around in the middle of the night? What's in your hand? Leaf patted his chest to calm himself. You scared the hell out of me. He was just going to the bathroom. He sounded strangely guilty. I was too sleepy to care and said, get out of here. I need to use the bathroom. Oh, Leaf left with his hand still behind his back. Just as I was about to close the door, he suddenly poked his head back in. What is it? I frowned at him. Leaf's face turned red slowly. After a moment, he finally muttered, ask that friend of yours if he has any more of that hair growth stuff. The end. Thank you for reading. Feel free to subscribe to the channel for the latest updates, with new novels added every day.